Welcome to, let's see where we are. Oh, we're at September. Uh, movie reviews, movie occult reviews. This is basically where I take, well, today I'm actually taking two, and two movies, usually horrors, and I discuss the occult aspects within the movies. So obviously there's going to be spoilers. Just bear that in mind before you go and watch this. If you haven't watched the movies in question, you might want to go do that first. Now, I was going to do Eyes Wide Shut, but there really wasn't enough. There is some kind of quasi pseudo occult implications in it, but it's more about power and sex and everything else rather than being a cult itself. So I kind of rewatched it and I thought it's actually not worth doing it. So I'm doing two movies today, two new movies actually came out this year, 2025. First one is Bring Her Back. The second one is Control Freak. Now, there's another thing that I actually need your help with. So you'll notice previously I was putting some clips throughout from the movies themselves. And just please excuse the background noise. Windows open. It's starting to get warm here, so I can't really block out too much of the noise in the background. But I was watching Bring Her Back, and now for people who obviously like the gruesome horror stuff, it's fine. But I actually like to hear from the people who are not so okay with that type of stuff. Because obviously, if I'm going to pull clips out of the movies and add them into these reviews, you're going to be viewing that content, and I don't want to add things which are a bit too triggering, too traumatic for a lot of people. So I'm going to leave the clips out completely and just talk about the movies. All right. But let me know what you think about that, how you feel about it. If it's something, you think I can keep in. As I said, Bring Her Back is a bit gruesome, the imagery. All right. So let's get started. All right, so let's start with Bring Her Back from, as I said, 2025 this year. This is from the Filippo brothers, who also made Talk to Me, which was a film already dripping with occult undertones disguised as possession horror. With this one, though, they dropped the mask. Bring Her Back doesn't just flirt with the occult, it dives into it head first, clawing at some of the darkest corners of grief, ritual, and obsession. From the first two scenes, you know you're in for something very raw. Two siblings, Andy and Piper, find themselves in a foster home, and everything about that house feels wrong. Not in the overdone, sort of creepy, haunted mansion sense, but in the sense that everything is ordinary on the surface, but saturated with intention, with ritual, with layers of meaning you only notice once you've stepped too deep. The house is lived in, it's safe looking, but underneath it all, there's this terrible pulse. That's where the occult creeps in. Not as flashy jump scares, but as atmosphere, as unseen currents shaping the story itself. And then we get Sally Hawkins as Laura. Hawkins plays grief as though it becomes a magical practice in itself. She isn't a witch in the Hollywood sense, cackling over cauldrons. She's worse. She's the sort of occultist who's willing to break every taboo, cross every line, and rip open whatever veil exists between the living and the dead, just to satisfy her obsession. Her grief over her dead daughter curdles into ritual, into obsession, and eventually into horror. The occult imagery here is relentless but clever. There's this reoccurring VHS tape showing an old cult ritual, and it's not treated as some gimmicky Easter egg. It feels like a cursed object in its own right. You know, watching it is like peering into one of those grainy 70s ritual films where you're not sure if it's performance or actual ceremony. Circles are drawn, bones are moved, Bodies are desecrated. It's a liturgy of desperation. What's powerful about it is that it doesn't look sleek or polished. It looks real, like something you'd kind of stumble across in an attic box and immediately regret pressing play afterwards. The core ritual in the film is brutal. Without spoiling every detail, it involves using human remains and living vessel to allow the dead to return. This is not romantic necromancy. It's messy, violent, and very, very grotesque. There are echoes of real folkloric practices here, feeding the dead, binding them to flesh. Although it does go into the movie fantasy with the idea that death can be reversed if you're willing to sacrifice enough. It's a movie after all. It reminded me of both old world necromantic texts and kind of modern urban legends about body hopping and soul jars. The movie understands that real occultism often isn't clean, especially when it gets desperate. What I loved is that the film ties these rituals directly to emotion. The occult isn't just there for spooky flavor, it's an extension of Laura's grief. The salt circles, the hair, the mirrors, all of it symbolizes her refusal to let go. Grief here is the true demon. And that's something a lot of occultists will recognize. Magic can heal, but it can also warp when it's driven by unchecked obsession. The film nails that. Andy and Piper carry the story as emotional anchors. Andy's trauma and survivor's guilt make him the perfect foil to Laura's madness. He's grounded, raw, and scared, but never melodramatic. Piper, on the other hand, brings something you don't often see in horror. Her blindness isn't a gimmick. It shapes how she experiences the haunting, and it puts us, the audience, in a position where silence and sound become central. You're pulled into her world, and it's terrifying because it feels honest. She's not the blind victim. She's a full person, resilient and sharp, which makes her vulnerability all the more important. Visually, the film drips with occult symbolism, although you might find, like I did, that the focus is less on the occult aspects and more on the horror, which is fine. As I said, it is a movie. But water is especially important. It's tied to death, Kathy's drowning, and the ritual's timing. It's the element of transition or liminality. The mirrors, meanwhile, are fractured and broken, and never giving you a whole image, always distorting. If you've ever worked with mirrors magically, you'll catch the subtle nods to their use as gateways between the worlds. But here's the real kicker. This isn't just a film about scary occult rituals. It's a film about how grief becomes its own kind of occult practice. Laura's rituals aren't just about bringing her daughter back, they're about refusing the natural order, rejecting death, and clinging to what's already gone. That's the real horror. Laura's will is iron, but twisted. She's the sort of magician who would burn down the world just to keep one soul close. And let's be honest, the film doesn't make this easy to watch. It's unflinching, at times almost unbearable. Some critics have complained it's too chaotic, too messy, but I'd argue that's the point itself. Real magic isn't tidy. Real grief isn't tidy. When the two collide, it's supposed to be uncomfortable. The last act especially is relentless. Blood, water, ritual, and the terrifying stillness of death clashing with the desperate beating heart of the living. The ending doesn't tie things up neatly, but it doesn't need to. It leaves you raw, like you've just survived the ritual yourself. Now, here's where I'll give the warning. If you're sensitive to trauma horror, this one's going to hit hard. It's not just scary, it's draining. It gets under your skin, not in the boo ghost in the mirror way, but in the what would you sacrifice for love way. It doesn't let you off the hook. It's powerful storytelling, but it's also heavy. So, is Bring Her Back worth watching for those of us fascinated by the cult? Absolutely. Not because it's an instruction manual for ritual magic, it definitely isn't, but because it understands the psychology behind it. It knows that at the heart of magic is desire, and at the heart of necromancy is grief. That's what gives this film its teeth. It's not just horror, it's a meditation on obsession, on the thin line between devotion and damnation. All right, so the next one, Control Freak. This it delivers a kind of body horror that's as metaphysical as it is skin crawling. Kelly Marie Tran stars as Valerie or Val Nguyen, a motivational speaker whose life is spiraling under the surface of a literal itch she can't escape. And once it starts, it just gets worse. It begins subtly enough. Val is successful, confident, even charismatic, but obsessively scratching the back of her head reveals something deeply wrong and impossible to ignore. The more she scratches, the more grotesque it becomes, twisting from minor discomfort into a visual and psychological nightmare. This itch leads her back to her roots. When Val needs her birth certificate to continue her international tour, she returns to a strange family. Her aunt, Twee, and then her father, Sung, a former soldier turned monk. It's here that the film lands on its occult pivot. Sang tells her about the sun Shi, a parasitic insectoid spirit from Vietnamese and more broadly Taoist folklore that feeds on its host, wrapping obsession, trauma, and generational pain into one horrifying package. The Sanshi isn't fluff. It's real in the story and a visceral embodiment of unresolved trauma. Sang confesses that he unwittingly summoned this curse during the Vietnam War, passing it to Val's mother and, by extension, to Val herself. The itch isn't illness, it's possession, the film suggests, manifesting as a flesh eating, will corrupting force that mirrors the repression and cultural dissonance Val struggled with. There's ambiguity though. Director Shell, I think it's pronounced Ngo, and critics wisely allow doubt. Is the Shanxi a metaphor or a physical reality? This is where Control Freak truly resonates. It doesn't straight up demonize Western self help culture, but it does hold it in stark relief beside a deeper ancestral kind of dread. Val's quest for control, both over her body and her mental state, dovetails with the horror. It becomes a battle she can't win through spreadsheets or pep talks. Critics single out the film's sound design too, particularly the amplified, repetitive itch and environment cues designed to drive you mad from within. It's an auditory assault that mirrors Val's unraveling. By the climax, the itch has burrowed into obsession. Val's compulsions escalate into self harm. She scratches through skin and into bone. She finds and confronts the creature physically, dragging the monstrous manifestation into a swimming pool in a desperate bid to drown it, repeating Sung's earlier, less successful attempt. She survives. She emerges scarred, drained, pregnant, suggesting rebirth. Yet, in a final chill, a fly crawls over her newborn, implying the Sanshi's influence may not be vanquished. The trauma, while mollified, hasn't disappeared. It may linger viscerally in blood and ancestry itself. What makes Control Freak remarkable isn't a polished, tidy message. It's emergent dread woven from immigrant memory, familial violence, and the unsilenced body. Tran gives a potent, raw performance as Vel, descending from self-help icon to haunted vessel. Some viewers might find the pacing uneven or the supernatural shift abrupt, but the film's melding of psychological and cultural horror is bold and kind of uneasy in all the right ways. If you're drawn to horror that serves as philosophical horror, Control Freak is a film that roots in the soil of personal, cultural, and inherited pain. It's a story of control turning inside out, where the real monsters are the traumas we can't ignore, even when we scratch them raw. And that brings us to the end of the movie reviews for this month. I hope you enjoyed those. I'll probably be doing 2 going forward. I'm just finding it easier to fit it into everything rather than trying to fit in 3. All right, so there'll just be 2 movie reviews each month from now on. Let me know about the exclusion or inclusion of clips from the movies themselves. If it bothers you, if you prefer them, if you would rather not see some gory visuals and things like that. Just I know there's going to be a mixed crowd, but I'd love to hear from you and your opinions on that. All right, so have a good one. Cheerio. Bye bye.